And to start us off in a good way at Royal Roads, we like to acknowledge our traditional lands. So at Royal Roads University, we do acknowledge that our campus is located on the traditional lands of the Lekwungen peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. And it is with deep gratitude that we now are able to learn and work here, where the past, present, and future of Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, faculty, and staff come together. So thank you all so much for joining us today. And of course, like I mentioned here, we are here to talk about our Doctor of Social Sciences program and how we can develop research that changes the world. My name is Ariana Kincherski. I am an education specialist here at Royal Roads University, and I am delighted to be joined by Dr. Mary Bernard, who's the professor and the program head. Mary, it's nice to be with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. So great to see you. And also a big welcome to everybody who joined the webinar today. Thank you.
Absolutely. And yeah, we are joined by some wonderful folks from our College of Interdisciplinary Studies as well. And I just want to give a moment of acknowledgement to allow them to introduce themselves. We can start perhaps with Carol. Thank you for joining us, Carol.
Thank you. I'm so glad that those of you that are attending today are here. We're happy to have you. And my name is Carol Sandu, and my title is College Manager with the College of Interdisciplinary Studies, and I'm the Administrative Manager in this unit of our university. And I will pass it along to I don't see Daria right now online. And if not, and our team is here together, but Yvonne, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Welcome in.
On.
It's very nice to be here today. My name is Yvonne Westcott, and I am the program associate with the DSOC program. So Mary and I work close together, Carol and I, and Daria. So yeah, are you there, Daria? She got kicked out. You can't get back in. She can't get back in either, so she'll keep trying. Okay. So I'll hand it over to Rhonda. Rhonda, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm an enrollment advisor with Royal Roads University, and I focus specifically on the doctoral programs. So, if throughout your journey with Royal Roads, if you have any questions that you're looking for answers to, feel free to reach out to me. I will post my contact information in the chat box, and happy to assist in any way I can.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you folks so much. So wonderful to be joined by all of you today. Lots of friendly faces in the room. So I'm just going to kick us off with a brief agenda before we get started here. So I'm going to give us a brief overview of the Royal Roads University experience to start us off. And then Mary's going to give us some information on the program. And then I'll walk us through the application process and requirements. And as always, feel free to type your questions in the chat if something we're saying is coming up, and we'll be happy to address as we go. And so if you're just learning about Royal Roads University for the first time here, I'll give us a little couple of points and a couple of images to look at here. So you'll see to the top left, we have a really beautiful campus. We have Hatley Castle, which is a castle on the campus here. And that's been in many movies like X-Men and Deadpool over the years, so quite a famous landmark. We also have a lot of gardens and green space here at Royal Roads. So you'll see to the right, we have our Japanese garden in the fall. It's a wonderful place to go for a walk. Similarly, we have our Esquimalt Lagoon, which is a migratory bird sanctuary we have on campus, another beautiful place. We have all kinds of trail spaces that go along with that. And then we've also been doing our online and blended learning models for over 25 years now. So you'll see the bottom right is an homage to that part of our university. We're also proud to be an Ashoka U Changemaker campus, which is an innovative approach to education that prepares students as they address world problems, encourage others, and act for the good of all. And at this point, I will toss it over to Dr. Mary Bernard, who's going to give us some information about the program. Mary.
Thanks so much. Just before I talk a little bit more about the program, I'm going to talk just a little bit about myself. I've been at Royal Roads for almost 24 years now. And during that time, I've held a number of senior academic admin roles. I was dean of each of our faculties for a year or so in each of those areas. But I was the associate vice president for research We have to keep in mind that Royal Roads is still a young university, as universities go. We're only a bit over a quarter of a century old, and so I came on board with Royal Roads University in order to start a research agenda for the university. And over the last 4 years, I have been heading the Doctor of Social Sciences program, which was a program I was involved in from the beginning. And it's really one of the nicest times of my career because it's the direct interaction with you as students. And one thing I can say about our office and the people that you met today is that we all love that direct interaction and the hands-on approach. And I think it's one of the components of Royal Roads University that stands out for most students as they're doing the degree and their reflections after they finish the degree is that kind of approach. You're not just a number here at Royal Roads. And I'll say especially so at the doctoral level because we're together for 4 years or 5 years. It's a long time, maybe even 6 sometimes. And so that's a long time to establish, working relationships. So I'll go to the next slide, thanks. So what is the Doctor of Social Sciences? Well, back then, 25 years ago or so, Royal Roads established a university that really was unique. And nothing existed in Canada like it at the time. And in many ways, there still isn't, in the sense that this not only is our Doctor of Social Science program interdisciplinary, but our university as a whole is interdisciplinary. You won't find a biology department or an English department or any discipline-based departments at Royal Roads. Instead, it's all thematic programming. And that includes the Doctor of Social Sciences. So we might bring in a group of students in the doctoral program from many, many different backgrounds, each one of you doing something different from one another. But the common base is that it's a social science degree. So the theoretical basis, the methodologies, and so on are all coming from that same base within the social sciences. And I'll use some some academic words here, the ontology and the epistemology and the methodology will all be in that mode. The way in which you see things, the way in which you learn things. There will be some commonalities across the board. Royal Roads is also different in that it was one of the first to develop blended models where you have the short intensive residencies, in our case, 3 weeks in year 1 and year 2, and then internet learning in between. Now, of course, especially since COVID, many universities are adopting similar kind of delivery methods. But we've now had more than a couple of decades working within that mode. And for us, it works. It works. It works for the students because while online is very, very helpful in that people don't have to leave their home communities, the wonderful thing about coming together for 3 weeks each year is that it's usually the amount of time maybe you might already have vacation period and you would use that time to come to Royal Roads. So you're not really impacting, most people aren't impacting their work directly in that sense, back in their home organization, or disrupting their families too much by being gone for 3 weeks at a time. So that 3-week period gives an opportunity for students to really get to know one another, for us to get to know you, and importantly, for the students to learn from one another. There's very intense period over those 3 weeks. I'm just going to refer to some of the points on the screen in front of you there. The Doctor of Social Science is a doctorate degree, but it's not a PhD. So there's two types of doctorates in the Western world, and that's a PhD, a Doctor of Philosophy, and a professional doctorate. And a professional doctorate is much more specific to a career, much more applied. In our case, in Raw Roads, we did a hybrid of mixing the two types of degrees together so that it's not fully a PhD because of its applied orientation, and it's not fully a professional doctorate because it goes beyond one career path. So, for example, if you were at University of Toronto, you could do a PhD in education, in which you're much more theoretically based, or at U of T, you could do an EDD, a Doctor of Education, education doctorate, which is much more applied. You're thinking perhaps of being a principal and you want a doctorate that brings you the next level up. Well, our degree combines those two approaches where you do have a strong research base to our degree, but at the same time, we want you to approach it from a very applied stance, so that you have an issue, a problem, or a solution that you want to work on over a number of years, whether it's in health field, education, environment, humanitarian studies, whatever the case may be. As you continue to work on your degree and getting ready to do a dissertation, you keep continuously refining that research and research question, and that grows into your dissertation. So it's very much real world problems. As I mentioned, it's very much interdisciplinary in perspective. You can bring in the disciplines you need to help describe that issue or problem that you're working towards. And therefore, you can begin to understand why it's complex. Doing an interdisciplinary applied degree is complex compared to, and it's not that others degrees aren't complex, they are, but you have to always keep in mind that you're bringing in many, many different fields of inquiry. Whereas if you were in one discipline, such as sociology, you may then narrow into one or two very specific fields of inquiry. But for us, it's wide open, and then you have to start the task of bringing it down into something manageable from all of the areas that you're drawing from. Many, many times, people who do our degree are building on what they are currently working on. Not always. So, for example, if you're a lawyer and you're working in Indigenous law and you want to take a doctorate, you may be very well build upon that base that you already have in the workplace and from your previous degree, and then work towards a dissertation that is going to give you information for the world that is change-oriented, change-oriented for that particular career path, or helpful sometimes to a very specific group of people, sometimes a specific group of organizations, sometimes very helpful to a group of communities. It all depends on what your background is, your life experience is, in combination perhaps with previous degrees, but not always, as sometimes people who apply to Roads, we aren't all spring chickens anymore, and people might be very well be, we could have people in their 30s, but very common to have people in our 40s and 50s who are ready to go forward with something that has bothered them for years and they want to change it. And one of the ways to do that is to spend a couple of years writing a dissertation and launching it upon the world and see what happens as a result of that. So when you graduate from Royal Roads with a Doctor of Social Science degree, you are a doctor. You know, if I was referring to Yvonne, it would be Dr. Westcott if she did that degree, but she would not put the word PhD after her name. She would put the credential D.Soc. Sci. Thanks. Next slide, please. Now, I want you to make sure to ask me questions as you go along. Anything you want. You know, you can ask questions about the particular slide that we're on, but if something else occurs to you at the same time, feel free to do that as well. The next page here just gives us a sample of some of the areas that students are working in. Now, and you can see it's a kind of every possible topic imaginable can potentially be eligible as long as it has that social science base. And because you will be expected to become familiar with the social science theories and the paradigms, the action-oriented methodologies, and so on. We could easily have a list of many, many hundreds, which is to let you know that when you're applying, you know, don't hesitate to pretend what you think it is you want to do, even if it's not on a list like this. And what we do when we get the applications is decide, like, we want to make sure that we can meet your needs. That's one thing. And then the other thing is we want to make sure that your proposal is feasible, that you can actually get this done in a 4-year period or 5-year period. Did I see a question pop up there?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just read it out for the group here. The first question that we have, Mary, is there any collaboration with faculty or studies related to psychology, cognitive science, or neuroscience? If you're looking to bring this into the social change project you want to undertake? That's the first question.
Yes. The short answer is yes. We have a couple of psychologists who are full-time core faculty. We have quite a few associate faculty, those people who work on a part-time basis, or maybe they'll just come in for one residency and so on, who have psychology backgrounds. We have quite a few people across disciplines who use neuroscience for organizational studies. Often it's more, not it doesn't necessarily have to be this way, but it often turns out to be more at the organizational level than at the individual personal level, as if you did a psychology degree. And I say that kind of helping to make a distinction. If you're looking at a few programs, for example, a PhD in psychology or a doctor in psychology, a Psych D, and you were, you know, wanting to be, for example, a clinical psychologist, this might not be the right program for you. But if you're looking at community studies and organizational studies and sector studies from a psychological perspective, or you were doing a leadership focus, and we're looking at large in relation to neuroscience and leadership, you might very well want to do this degree.
Excellent.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
Perfect. That's great. And then the next question that we have in the chat, is it only, two-part question, is it only Rural Roads who uses the DSOC-SCI, and is this acceptable for future academic studies?
So the answer is no and yes. No, we're not the only one. And yes, it's suitable for additional study. Like, for example, we usually have a couple of postdoctorates affiliated with Rural Roads who receive grant funding from the federal government after their degree. When we were looking to do our first doctorate program for Rural Roads, we searched the world over actually to see which degree and which type might be the best one for us. It's like you can't just pick doctorates out of the air, right? Like, and the Doctor of Social Sciences, there's none in North America right now other than ourselves, but there are in the UK and in Finland and New Zealand. And we actually went to visit one of the ones in the UK and consulted with them as we were developing our program. It's fully recognized in Canada. It's fully supported by our BC Ministry of Advanced Education. We had to go through at least a 2 or 2.5 year process to be able to mount the degree. And like all degrees in British Columbia, had to go through a degree quality review board made up of our 5 sister universities, research universities in BC, UVic, UBC, SFU, etc. And we had to make sure that all of our sister universities were satisfied and would sign off before we, as well as the minister, before we did that degree. That said, you might have to explain it because it's probably less so now because we have quite a few doctoral students out there. But it helps when you put doctor in front of your name and you're from one of the 5 research universities in BC. Not all are, by the way. There's only 5 of us that are designated research universities. It's kind of the club.
That's amazing. Thank you, Mary. And then there's another question here in the chat. Perhaps Rhonda, I'm not sure if you can jump in on this, or somebody from the team. How many people apply on average per year? It's a question that we have. Not sure.
Rhonda, maybe just while you're thinking further about that, may I just jump in with something that's related to this?
Oh,
I do about 50 Zoom calls a year with potential students. And Rhonda usually does many of those calls before I do. Because Rhonda explains all the administrative aspects, operational aspects, and then I'm more apt to do the research focus. Of those 50 a year, about 19 are admitted each year.
So we do have a good acceptance rate because of the conversations we have in advance. So, we probably have between 20 and 30 applications each intake, with a good number being accepted because of previous conversations and hearing that your research is a good fit with the program.
And thank you for noting that part, Rhonda, because what I find is rather than have people go through all the application and so on, I mean, it still happens this way. We don't always catch every call, every person that's applying, but it helps a lot to have the conversation to help people decide whether this is the degree for them. And, you know, a lot of the things, pieces that Rhonda will talk to you about as well, because, you know, we'll talk about this part a little bit later in terms of the cost of the degree. Like, there are programs to apply for funding and so on. But I almost always say that if, you know, if you're putting forth an application, have a pretty good idea if you can self-fund. Because if grants don't come through for you, it's a big time and investment, right? And only to find out that you can't make it your first year. And then in those cases, like I often talk to people, well, why don't you just wait a year? You know, sometimes somebody's in the middle of a job change or something like that. Now, of course, I don't mean I'm discouraging, but I often try to help people decide, is this the right time for them? Because it's a big project to take on. It's an exciting project to take on. Rhonda will probably tell you as well that our retention rate is very good. Um, and 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 you just want to make sure that you're entering it at a time that you can afford the hours. And you know, that said, we have people with, you know, 5 kids, a full-time job, they're doing the doctorate, and they have something else on the side that has to be done, like you know, they're running for local politics or something. That's not a fake example. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary. We have many questions in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. I'm just going to put forward one more here. I'm wondering, at the point of application for the DSOC program, how specific should one's research interest be? And then how much is it expected that that will change over the course of the first couple of years of the program?
Yeah. So any of the team can jump in on this one, I think, because we're all familiar with changes, frequent changes. Yeah. You come in with one idea. I just had somebody who pretty much did 180-degree change. And it's just before a candidacy exam. So it was a good time to do it. You know, you don't want to go for 2 years and then change your mind. In terms of the overall topic, I mean, it still probably happens, but as the further along you go, the more comfortable you become with your topic, and or the more you change it, till you get to the point where you have your candidacy exam. You're kind of settled into it at that point, and you write your proposal before you start before you start your research.
And we do get that a lot with the new students that come in. And, you know, we just finished a residency in January, and, you know, we reach out and we're like, oh, you know, can you just send me your topic? We're getting ready for residency. And you're like, oh my goodness, they're so scared to send it because they think that it's written in stone, and it's not. And, you know, once you start the program and you get in, you see that's how it works and everybody's in the same boat. It eases up a little bit, but you see a lot of, you know, nervousness around it. It's like, okay, goodness, once I put this on paper, that's it. I'm tied to this for the next, you know, 4 years or whatever. And it's not that way, for sure. We see it all the time, right, Mary? So
all the time.
Yeah.
It seems to
And
be
we want
very emerging and evolving in those
Yes.
first couple of years, or first year for sure, right, Mary? You see much
That's
more
right.
broad kind of areas of research, but it's working on narrowing it down.
Mhm.
And that's what the program will do for you too, is to help you narrow it.
Yeah. And you know, your focus can still be interdisciplinary. Of course, it still is interdisciplinary, and you're still drawing from many different disciplines and fields of inquiry, but it has to be a doable piece, right? And you know, once you have your degree, you can do as many more articles and so on as you want to do, but getting something down that's manageable, feasible, is a big part of that first year. Lots of help to do it.
Absolutely. And then we'll just toss over one last question here. Could you speak a little bit about the dissertation by portfolio option?
Yeah, so we've been doing this for quite a few years now. It's becoming increasingly popular. So I think the thing to emphasize is the research is the same, whether you do a monograph dissertation, you know, the big dissertation, 250 pages or so is typical. But it can be, we allow people to do more than that. Sometimes the topics just require it. Or whether you do a portfolio composed of 3 separate pieces plus a synthesis paper. And the 3 separate pieces can be, there's a required piece, which is a journal article, and then there's 2 required elective pieces. You know, it could be a video, could be curriculum development, a policy paper, or you could have all 3 portfolio pieces be journal articles. And the synthesis paper brings those together. So there's 4 pieces as opposed to 1 larger piece. I'd say the majority of people are still doing the monograph. The portfolio, you know, ultimately most people who do a monograph will do journal articles after they graduate, and or policy papers, and get their research out there in that way. So in a way, you know, they're both meeting the same ends. The people who do the portfolio like to get a jump start on that and get their information out there in that form as opposed to the full document. It's good. People like it a lot, but it's not for everybody. Many people like to have the large formal document and do the journal articles and other pieces after they graduate. Okay. We good to go on the questions?
Yeah, I think there's a couple remarks in the chat just about some specific situations for folks, but I believe, Rhonda, you've also put your email in the learn.more email in the chat, and that's always helpful, I think, for folks to book a one-on-one as well, which is something that I will follow up on after the session too. So any specific questions like that, and there's a couple admin type questions, which we will get to later in the presentation. So I'll leave those for now, and you can carry on for now, Mary.
Okay, then. So we'll skip to the next slide. So I think we've covered the first 2 items here on this slide, the interdisciplinary and applied nature of this degree. The applied nature of the degree is very attractive. Most people that apply to this program is because they want the opportunity to dig into a real world problem. And so that's what this is. It's an applied piece of work, but grounded in research and with a theoretical base. We've covered the blended learning with residencies and online classes in between. It's cohort based. We're just moving from 2 intakes a year to 1 intake a year. So we probably will, you know, we'll probably accept 19 into the program. So in January 2025, that cohort would be 19 people. And you stay with that cohort over the first, you know, through both residencies. Your first residency in year 1 and your second residency in year 2. After that, there often begins to be a bit of movement. And maybe somebody from our team can sort of adjust how that might look. Oops, sorry. just in the sense that, you know, you might need to take a term off and can't quite get back into your same cohort. Like you might be in year one and you would have to take a term off, or you weren't well, or work didn't allow you to continue as you wanted to, and you would have to take your second residency with a different cohort. After you start the dissertation itself, you know, you're not moving always together with your cohort. The intent is to move with your cohort, but again, life often interferes, and you proceed as it makes sense for you. And you might, some of your members of your cohort may be ahead of you, some of them might be behind you, and so on. But you would still be in that same cohort.
We see it every
Intention.
day. You know, we spend a lot of our time with that. And it's right, you know, that's the intention. But, you know, and the same as when new students come in and we see it, you know, when residency starts and they're in a group and you get really close and things like that. And they assume, you know, everybody will be together for, you know, the long haul. And it rarely ever works out like that. Sometimes we'll see it, of course, but you know, you get to that point where the dissertation starts and, you know, people are off doing their own thing, but life does get it, you know, interfere sometimes. And I mean, it's not really an interference, it's just where we are all at, you know, whether you're doing your, you know, doctorate or you're at work or you're raising a family, things happen sometimes. And especially over the course of 4 years, I mean, we have no way of preventing those things. And we see it and we make it work. I mean, we make it work for everybody every day. And there's different circumstances that pop up. And that's why we always say, you know what, you know, don't suffer in silence, reach out to us. And if there's anything that we can do, we will absolutely do it. You don't get to come into this program and then continue on a 4-year path where there's no bumps in the road or nothing changes. And this course is being offered at different times, and we'll make it work for you. Just all it takes is communication, a conversation, and for us to know where you're at. If you disappear and we can't help you, but open communication for sure. And I haven't seen yet where there wasn't something that we could do to accommodate whatever is happening in life. So that's one really great thing I do find about the program. You're in your coursework, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stay where you're at. And people are all over the place, but you know, your timing is not necessarily the same as everybody else's timing. And it's a great program for that from what I see from it.
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. You know, because a large part of Yvonne's work is actually, you know, redoing people's schedules and so on, and keeping track of that kind of movement and helping with it. The last item there is flexible supervisory model. So when we applied to the Ministry of Advanced Ed to do this degree, one of the things we were very conscious of is that we're still a small university. And so that means we don't have the number of faculty members that UBC does, or UVic, for example. And so the ministry allowed us to have a flexible model for supervision, so that if there's a great person, for example, at UBC or at York University or Dalhousie University, that you want to reach out to be a supervisor, or maybe just to be on your supervisory committee. You have a committee of 3. And again, this is after the first year and a half or so. You don't have to worry about that before you come in, which is another difference that we have compared to some other doctoral programs, where you have to have your supervisor identified before you make your application. But here we do it the opposite way around. We want you to take that first year plus to get to know who might be appropriate for you as a supervisor, and then not until after the second residency do you actually put together a committee. And when I say the first, it's almost 2 years before you would actually formally put together that committee, or even a bit more. And I would say the majority of our students have supervisors from Royal Roads, but we certainly have some amazing supervisors from other universities. And it doesn't have to be confined to Canada, as long as they can meet the criteria of being an associate professor rank, or full professor rank, and that they're at another university, pretty much anywhere in the world, that is accredited university, proper accredited university, and the supervisor has their own track record and they're for research, and they've supervised graduate students before, because we don't want people experimenting with you. We want seasoned people. Then you're open to approach them, and I can also back that up for you by often talking to people from my perspective as well. And we've had great success at the bringing in people from other universities. Thanks. I think we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, just before we do, Mary, we have one more question in the chat that's popped up. Somebody's asking, what is the theoretical base? Does the program also include research and knowledge from the Global South?
Only if you're interested in the Global South, in the sense that we wouldn't be giving a course related specifically to the Global South, because everybody that's in the class may have interests that are outside the Global South, other than yourself, for example. So that said, you would get a supervisor for your directed study who was a specialist in the Global South, and they would help guide you in the content in that area. We also have a School of Humanitarian Studies that you would draw from, which has several different programs, one in human security and another, for example, in conflict management, where international conflict, failed states, you name it, are their topic of conversation, including Indigenous peoples. So it's not like we have a course, and it's a good question you asked, because it helps me to explain this interdisciplinary nature of the program. So the theory that you're going to get in your theory class is going to be all of the basic underlying theories in social sciences, going way back to the 1800s, all the way through to the most current theories. We also offer a paradigm course, which does something similar. And so from there, you're individualizing it for yourself once you have that base. Does that make sense? Is that sufficient explanation there? It's kind of a little bit like putting fog in the bottle, trying to describe our approach sometimes. Oh yeah, thank you. Okay, it's okay, Ariana, for me to go on to this one?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, so 4 years in length. We have there maybe more or maybe less. It's rare to be less. We have had a couple. I know, Carol, we were excited last year. We had somebody that went through pretty quickly, but it's only so fast you can go because of the required courses. So when you do pick up speed, it's at the dissertation stage. After your courses are all done, and after you have your candidacy exam, there's an oral exam. There's a written exam, followed by an oral exam, and then you develop your proposal, and then you do your ethical review, and finally you can start your research. And it can be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And that's where you gain or lose time. It's not really losing time. I mean, many people have no desire to speed it up because you want to enjoy the experience. You want to get out of it what you need, right? And the research, it's interesting because when we do research grants and so on, I always have to develop timelines, and we require you to develop timelines for this as well. But research is unpredictable in terms of time. You might say that you're going to work with the community for X number of months, but people are people, and what you think you can do in a couple of months for data gathering might turn out to be a year. There's so many places where there's variation, or just recruiting your people that you want to interview. Like we've had some students, they planned on about 2 or 3 months to put out the recruitment invitations and so on. But 6 months later, they have 10 interviewees. Well, it's not going to cut it necessarily. Yeah. And they have to go back to the drawing board. Okay, and I think I covered all of the rest of those things. Yep. Okay. Student funding. So hard to talk about student funding. So Rose, just like any other public university in Canada, we're open to our students applying to the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, as well as the Canadian Institutes for Health Research, as well as the Natural Sciences and Engineering for the science-based research. It's just the first two, and more particularly the first one, that our students apply to. We also apply to a program called MyTax, and it's a great program. Our students have been very successful on that, and we don't have a quota, which is nice. We can just go ahead and submit as many as we want. Success rate has been great. The catch is you have to have 50% of the funding come from another organization. And a lot of students who are, maybe working for a particular organization while they're doing this degree, the organization finds it to their benefit to pay that 50% so that they may benefit from the research as well, and it works. You can even do it if you're an entrepreneur and have your own business as well, although you receive less funding as a result. We also have a large number of internal smaller grants as well. The internal meaning specific to Royal Roads University as opposed to external funding. Carol, are you still on that committee by any chance?
Just on an awards adjudication committee.
Yes.
that they do quarterly or 3-4 times a year. There's staff from all over the university that are on the committee from different units in the university. But yes, I am.
Yeah, and does any of the internal grants come to mind that or just to describe the nature of them, or an example of how much they might be worth?
Gosh, Mary, I'm trying to think. I wasn't in the last round of them. I mean, they vary. There's some larger chunks. There's lots out there for little smaller chunks. We're talking, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. There may be some 10,000 amounts of awards, but without going, if you go right to our financial aid and awards on our website, it really does give some good detail and outlines what's out there and what we have for our awards as well.
And so the link there that Carol is
Yeah.
referring to is right on the page there in front of us. And also a place to make an appointment to discuss your needs with the finance student finance awards area.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
wonderful. They have a wonderful associate that does help our students a lot. So I recommend exploring on the financial aid and awards site.
And I would really also like just keep in mind that two things, like be prepared to self-fund. Like it's really important that like everybody, I encourage everybody to apply for awards and so on, but it is a competitive process. And you know, if you want some certainty, you know, you want to be prepared to self-fund, and keeping in mind that each year you can apply for awards and so on. But you know, it's difficult if you get accepted and you're ready to go and everything's in place, but there's not really the funds for that first payment. And the other thing I want to emphasize too is, you know, it's a fairly complex degree, and it requires it's all doable. You know, you're working full time and your other duties full time, but you know, you need to always keep in mind that it's a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of thinking time over quite a few years. It's different than doing a master's degree, which could be 1 year or 2 years. You know, when it's a 4-year program, you're in there pretty deep, and you want to make sure that you know that you know you're ready to do it. Yeah. I think is that my last slide?
It is, yeah. I will go ahead. Thank you so much, Mary. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the how to apply. So we've talked a little bit about it so far, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to keep popping them in the chat as I'm speaking here. So we did mention admissions. So as far as the admissions go for the Doctor of Social Science program, we require a master's degree in one of the social science or related field if required, as well as evidence of experience related to the degree program. That looks like normally a minimum of 10 years with senior level decision-making authority, as well as an interdisciplinary applied research proposal that reflects current research focus in the College of Interdisciplinary Studies or the schools within the Faculty of Social and Applied Sciences at Royal Roads University. I don't know, Mary, is there anything you wanted to add to that, or Rhonda? Just want to pause for a moment so I don't speed through it.
In terms of well, let me turn it to Rhonda first. If she's I can't see if she's still on screen or not.
Yeah, I'm still here. I quite often get asked about having a social science degree specifically. And my response is generally, we'll look at whatever you bring in relation to your research topic. So if you can make a case for, say, an MBA that adds some support to the focus of your research, then we'll consider your application for sure. With the 10 years of experience, it also depends on the nature of the experience. The more decision level of experience you have, the stronger your application. The more relevant your experience is to the focus of your research, the stronger your application can be. So it is a case-by-case assessment based on what you're researching and what you're bringing to that research.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much, Rhonda. I just wanted to leave some space. I appreciate you adding that on just for the details. And then how to apply. There are, of course, thorough descriptions of this on our website under the how to apply, but just as some brief steps here. We first ask for an online application fee of $134.01, and we also ask for some supporting documents. I know there was a question about this earlier, so hopefully this clears some things up. So we ask for documents like official transcripts, a detailed resume, so really giving our admissions advisors the full details of your work experience, volunteering, who you are, as well as a writing sample, 3 letters of reference, and a preliminary applied research proposal. And then just as far as dates, we mentioned the next intake is coming up in 2025 on January 6th. And then the application deadline for that, which will be here, I'm sure, before we know it, is October 6th, 2024, if you're thinking of applying for the next intake.
May I just add to that date? The way the adjudication works right now, if we have a pile of applications already in, we'll start the adjudication process before October 6th. So for example, I'm already receiving applications for January 2025. And so I advise you don't wait until October 6th. That's kind of the last time you can apply, but don't wait. Start getting them in, and they'll be adjudicated in batches as we go along.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mary. Yeah, that is a very good point. The sooner the better. Application support. We have the wonderful Rhonda, of course, on the line. And we also have our enrollment advisors, and they're here to help you. They navigate in-depth program details, the application process, admission requirements, all sorts of stuff. And they can also connect you with faculty and alumni as well.
And I saw a question that popped up again about supervision. Does the supervisor need to be identified in advance of the application? No, you have way over a year to make that decision. There is a direct study after the first residency, and there is a supervisor for that directed study. That person often becomes the supervisor for the dissertation as well. But you will have time to identify that supervisor as well. January to April, you would have enough time to identify someone.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for adding that, Mary. That's excellent. And then this is just the contact information for enrollment advisors. So we have a number for toll-free on the screen there. And of course, I'll include this for the folks not tuning in live in my follow-up, and as well learn.more at royalroads.ca. And Rhonda, I believe you've also put your email in the chat. So thank you for that. I can include that in the follow-up as well. But that is the main information to get in touch with us. Of course, please, if you have any questions or anything that comes up, don't hesitate. We're always here to help. So and that about wraps me up, but I just want to give the floor back to Mary and the members of the College of Interdisciplinary Studies. If there's any last things to add, please feel free to do so as we're wrapping up here.
Okay, maybe I'll just add one thing before I turn it back to Yvonne and to Carol and Daria. I mentioned I do about 50 Zoom calls a year. So if you want to be one of those 50 people, just get in touch with Yvonne and set up a meeting, or we'll try to make sure that you get in. It might not be in the first week or two after you ask for a meeting, but it will be most likely be within that 2 weeks period of time. If you're an international student, and I don't know if anybody is on from other countries today, you know, everything takes so much longer, right? With student visas and so on. So you really want to start that process well in advance. I'll turn it back to Carol and Yvonne. In case
Thank
there's
you.
anything.
Thank you, Mary. Just again, just to add to make sure you do explore further on the website and be in touch with Rhonda. Rhonda is a marvel at her knowledge of this program, and also checking and looking at the schedule that's on the program. So it gives you an idea of when the courses, where are they, where do they fall timeline wise, and more in particular, the residencies.
Good.
And that's it for me.
I've just popped my email in the chat and I see Rhonda's there as well. It was so nice to see you all online today. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sure we'll probably see some of your names popping up again. Feel free to get in touch anytime if you have general questions or if you want to make an appointment to talk to Mary. Yeah, reach out. We'll be happy to talk. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Everybody who's able to tune in live and on the recording. It's been a pleasure. So thank you so much. And we hope to see you in the program soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you as well, Ariana.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.